Welcome to Nonprofit Stories, inspiring tales from Silicon Valley. We will explore the transformative work of nonprofit organizations and leaders who are changing our community by tackling some of the most pressing issues facing Silicon Valley. So without further ado, let's dive into this exciting conversation. Today, we welcome Julie Hutchison and Alice Kaufman from Green Foothills of Silicon Valley. Their mission is to protect the open space, farmland, and natural resources of San Mateo and Santa Clara counties for the benefit of all through advocacy, education, and grassroots action. Thank you to our sponsor, TradeMyHome.com, for their community commitment and for making this podcast possible. Silicon Valley faces critical climate challenges. Rapid urbanization has caused a 40% loss in wildlife habitats over 20 years, worsened air quality due to a 25% drop in tree cover impacting health and ecosystems, and increased water pollution, leading to a 30% decline in aquatic biodiversity since 2000. These issues underscore the region's urgent environmental concerns. Before we dive into the conversation, let's learn a little about the organization's great work so far.
Since 1962, Green Foothills has worked to protect the open spaces, farmlands, and natural resources of San Mateo and Santa Clara counties for the benefit of all through advocacy, education, and grassroots action. All of these places provide a home for the animals and plants that we share the earth with. Every day, Green Foothills is on the front lines championing the protection of these key landscapes. Whether you are just finding out about us or you've been a part of the Green Foothills community for years, responded to one of our calls for action, or attended a rally, each of us should be so proud of what our community has done together. Thank you for being an advocate of our work and an important part of the Green Foothills community. It's only because of the support of wonderful people like you that we can be a champion for local nature.
Our host today, Didi Kiso, brings over 30 years of nonprofit expertise to the show, inspiring joyful giving and transforming lives through her dynamic leadership and visionary approach.
Okay, Julie and Alice, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourselves?
Oh, sure. Well, I'm the Policy and Advocacy Director for Green Foothills. I've been with the organization 12 years, and my work is through our advocacy to help protect the open space, farmland, and natural resources in our area, according to what we do.
I'm the executive director. I've been with the organization 12 years, so I consider myself very lucky to do the work that we do and help lead a really fantastic staff.
So please tell us about your organization's history and how it all began.
Well, we'd have to go back to 1962 when 27 people just like you and me, gathered together in a living room around a common passion, and that was to ensure that local open space was protected amidst a really quickly growing Bay Area. And fast forward almost 62 years ahead, and here we are. Green Foothills has protected almost 200,000 acres of local natural landscapes, and many of those are loved local nature preserves that people visit every day, thousands of people.
So why don't you tell us just exactly some of the places that you have preserved?
Well, some folks might recognize the name of the Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve or Bear Creek Redwoods. There are many of them, many of the county parks. We had a big hand in making sure that the Mid-Peninsula Open Space District was formed, that we supported ballot measures to ensure that the county parks was well-funded. We've been basically in the trenches doing that work for a very long time, so that's why you see the lovely green belt that we have around this valley.
Wonderful. What are some of your favorite preserves?
Oh gosh, I could go on. Like Julie said, some of the preserves in the Santa Cruz Mountains that Santa Clara County Parks and Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District have helped to preserve. I love to go hiking in El Corte de Madera Preserve. It is a lovely redwoods area. It's just so wonderful on like a hot summer day to go there and go underneath the redwoods and feel just the coolness and the peace and the silence of the redwood forest. It's amazing that we can have this open space so close to where millions of people live. It's an incredible privilege we have to live here.
Why are you passionate about this organization?
Well, I started out my career as an environmental lawyer working in toxics litigation. And what drew me to Green Foothills was the desire to help to protect the beauty of the open space that's all around us. And whenever I get the chance to go out into open space as part of my work, it's so rejuvenating, and it just reminds me of why we do this work. One of those beautiful places that I think of when I think of that is called Uristock. It's a landscape that covers thousands of acres in southern Santa Clara County and northern San Benito County, and it's a landscape that is sacred to the Amamutsun tribal band. It's also a critical wildlife corridor for mountain lions and other animals. But unfortunately, Uristock is under threat from an open pit sand and gravel mine operation. And this is a proposal that would dig up the hillsides, create pits hundreds of feet deep, and completely block the wildlife corridor, as well as devastating the sacred indigenous landscape. And so Green Foothills is supporting the tribe, the Amamutsun tribal band, and helping to lead the fight to protect Uristock and to defeat this open pit mining proposal.
And what about you, Julie?
Well, actually, I've been super fortunate all my life in that I have grown up close to nature. So I've been able to enjoy it and access it so easily. And I think because of that, I have a very strong bond with nature, and that really spurred environmental activism in me. I started out by forming a community group that, raised its voice for the protection of local farmland that was under threat. And that brought me into contact with Green Foothills. And then, of course, I had the super good fortune of being hired as an advocate. And I'm very passionate about our advocacy program, but I'm also really passionate about our leadership program. And the reason for that is this is a training program for environmental advocacy, to have people learn how to do effective environmental advocacy for wanting to do change in their communities. And I wish I had that when I first started out, but it's just wonderful to see the people who come out of this program and how they change things in their community that they know are important and what their communities would like to see change around.
Wonderful. So who are some of the right fit people for this advocacy program and this leadership program?
Well, for the advocacy program, we hire professional staff like Alice. For our leadership program, that's open to a diversity of people, 18 and up. All sorts of backgrounds. So you just have to have a passion for wanting to make change in your community around an environmental issue. And we just get folks from all walks of life. It's really wonderful.
So share a story where your organization has made a big difference.
Yeah, I think one of our most impactful efforts has been our campaign to protect Coyote Valley. So Coyote Valley, for people who don't know what or where that is, it's in southern part of San Jose, and it is a critically important wildlife corridor and floodplain. It's the way that animals migrate between the Santa Cruz Mountains and the Diablo Range from west to east and back again. And it's so important for flood and groundwater protection. It has some of our last remaining prime farmland. This area used to be called the Valley of Heart's Delight because of the beauty of the orchards that blossomed in the spring. And Coyote Valley is, one of our last farmland areas. So it's really important for all of these reasons. However, for decades, the city of San Jose had targeted Coyote Valley for industrial development. So instead of the fields and creeks that we have there now, we could have had warehouses and other industrial buildings. And it took a broad coalition to convince the city to change its course and to decide to protect Coyote Valley. It wasn't just environmental groups. We partnered with labor unions and business organizations. We partnered with educators, farmers, tribes, and over 2,500 San Jose community members who contacted the city council and told them they wanted them to protect Coyote Valley. So, we got to give credit to the city. It was an incredibly bold and visionary step that they took to change their course and declare that this land was just too important to be developed and to say that it needed to be protected for open space and farmland. There are still some developers who are still trying to get the city to approve development there. So we're going to continue fighting as long as we need to protect Coyote Valley.
Well, it sounds like there's tenacity in your group.
One of our core values is persistence. It took decades to be able to protect Coyote Valley, and we're going to keep protecting it for as long as it needs it.
What specific programs do you run?
We have a few, but we have two core programs, our advocacy program and our leadership program. And our advocacy program, as you're hearing from Alice, is really about weighing in on issues, on land use issues. So making sure we're speaking up for nature, but making sure it's in a science-based, factual way. And we talk to decision makers and help them understand why it's important for them to institute policies and vote for protections of our local nature, as well as mobilizing community members. That's really important too. Getting them involved because you find out that community members, when they understand what's going on, everybody's so busy, when they do, they want to weigh in. And they have a very strong voice and they make change by weighing in. And we do that in ways that makes it simple for them. The leadership program, that's a really wonderful 8-month training program. And it trains and supports people to make effective environmental change in their communities. It's open to a diversity of people, and it's offered in Spanish and English. And it's followed up by an alumni program where we support their change. It's been going on for 10 years now, and we have over 260 graduates out there with more than half of them in leadership roles.
So just to follow up, would this be appropriate for some urban development? Do you find yourselves getting involved in any of that?
We're more in the sense of looking at nature within cities. So if nature is being affected in the sense of a creek, if there's development too close to a creek, or we want to make sure that some green space needs to be protected. One of the things that we're working on with many other folks is the Reed Hillview Airport. That's a real opportunity to make sure that we create some open space, which is tough to do in San Jose, and make sure that the community has access to nature close to home. That's very important.
Tell me a story where volunteers have shared a key role in your organization.
Well, we offer a program called Healing in Nature, and that's getting out into nature, having a very peaceful experience. We offer meditative activities, and docents share information about local nature. And those docents are volunteers, so they help lead in this program, and they're critical to making sure that people have a lovely experience out in nature. Another one would be our community members. Community members who voluntarily, listen to act on our calls to action and submit comments or speak up at meetings. Their time is so precious, and it really makes a difference.
Share a story about your organization's unique challenges and how you resolve them.
Well, the work that we do is unique in a lot of ways, the advocacy work, and a lot of people don't have a good sense of what advocacy work means. A lot of people will picture rallies or protests or going to speak at a city council meeting, and those are all important. Those are very important tactics that we use in advocacy, but you really can't create real change unless you lay the groundwork ahead of time. And what that really involves is building relationships and forming those connections and communicating effectively. And so that can be a real challenge when you're trying to reach elected officials who are so busy and have to balance so many competing demands. But what the mantra that we live by is that it's our job to make it easy for decision makers to do the right thing. And we found that when elected officials listen to us and find out that we're supported by the community, the community members agree with what we're saying, that our positions are supported by science, and that what we're really asking them to do is protect the environment for future generations, then it is easy for them to vote the way we would like them to vote. But the challenge is just reaching people, and so we're working at that all the time.
A typical problem homeowners have when wanting to buy a new home is whether to sell first or buy first. Either way is risky. When ready to look for a new home, TradeMyHome.com, powered by Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, offers an upfront guaranteed cash offer on your current home. Are you moving in the next 3 to 6 months? Text PAIR to 408-740-7400 for a free and no obligation professional equity appraisal report, exclusively for Nonprofit Stories podcast viewers. For more information, visit TradeMyHome.com or call 408-740-7400. Remember, at TradeMyHome.com, your home is sold guaranteed or we'll buy it.
What is your vision for what the organization is working to achieve?
Well, the organization is looking to create a resilient region where wildlife thrives, where everyone has natural beauty to enjoy, and where communities live in balance with nature. That's actually our vision for 2062, which is our 100th anniversary. And we really seek to create, to see communities become climate resilient, to see native wildlife and habitats being restored, to seeing everybody having access to nature, and having farms and ranches really strengthen communities.
So tell me, what is a common misconception about your organization?
Yeah, I would say that a common misconception is a lot of people think that environmental groups are anti-development. And that's not the case. The truth is that the vast majority of developments get approved without any problems. The question is where. The question is, where is a development project located? And the reason that that's important is because if you build development on open space out at the edge of cities, then that creates sprawl. And sprawl is problematic not just because it's gobbling up open space, habitat, farmland, but also because it is a problem for climate resilience. In order for our communities to be climate resilient and to effectively combat climate change, we need to build infill development in cities close to transit, close to where jobs are and schools. We shouldn't be building sprawl development out on the edge of cities because then everybody has to drive everywhere. You have more greenhouse gases and more carbon emissions, as well as destroying the trees, grasses, vegetation that absorb carbon from the atmosphere in the first place. So, Green Foothills, we're very, very vehement in believing that our communities need to build up rather than out, and we need to really focus the future of our communities in infill areas.
So, Alice, recently there seems to be a lot of concern about wildfires, insurance companies pulling out of the Santa Cruz Mountains. Tell us about that. What do we not know?
Well, I'm sure that there's a lot that we don't know. We're doing the best that we can with the knowledge that we have, and of course, we're learning more all the time. But yeah, wildfire is a huge concern for California and for the whole world in a lot of areas. Where our work intersects with that is the fact that we're taking a very strong stance that we really should not be building more homes in areas that are vulnerable to wildfire. It just doesn't make sense to be putting people's lives and homes at risk, and it's harmful for the environment as well, because the wildfire zones typically are out in the wildland-urban interface, which is abbreviated WUI or WUI. If you hear people talk about WUI, that's what they mean. And it's really just sort of that in-between space that isn't wilderness and isn't urban. It's an area that is very difficult for firefighters to get to put out the fires that are threatening people's homes. And, it's also an important area for wildlife. So, keeping homes and development out of wilderness areas and not expanding further into them, with additional development, protects both people and nature. And that's one thing that's really important. Another thing that I want to mention that has really gotten a lot more attention in recent years is going back to indigenous management practices for fire prevention. And I'm really glad to say that the state of California has really leaned in on that, on partnering with tribes and bringing back, tribes have always had this knowledge, but bringing back as far as sort of the official, governmental way of managing for wildfires. And just relearning from the tribes how to just work with nature to prevent wildfires through things like controlled burns and wildfire fuel reduction.
So controlled burns and wildfire fuel reduction. Can you tell us a little more on what that would look like if we were advocates for this and we were moving forward in a positive direction? What would community look like?
Well, I can tell you we're doing it now. So I can definitely tell you what it looks like. And by we, I mean, our area, governmental agencies in our area and organizations that work on this, especially since the wildfires that happened in 2020. There's been a lot more investment in this type of work. And controlled burns happen. This is something that will happen when there isn't any danger of a controlled burn getting out of control. So you'll do it when conditions are low risk for wildfires, and agencies and land managers will go out into areas that are considered to be higher risk for wildfires and set controlled burns, which they monitor very carefully to make sure they don't get out of control. And that will make that area less likely to burn during the next fire season. And wildfire fuel reduction includes controlled burns. It also includes mechanical reduction, like going out there and physically removing the underbrush that's more likely to catch fire, but leaving the trees to shade the forest floor so that it stays cooler and moister, rather than just taking out the trees and letting everything get very hot and dry, which is, of course, exactly the conditions that would spark a fire.
So finally, I have to ask you, can you fill us in on what it is we need to know about sea level rise living here in the Bay Area where we do?
That is such a good question. The Bay Area is definitely vulnerable to sea level rise. San Mateo County, which was one of the counties Green Foothills works in, and it's where I live, is considered to be the most vulnerable county in California for sea level rise in terms of the economic impact to the county. And the reason for that is because San Mateo County has two coastlines. We have the Pacific Ocean coast and we have the Bay. And San Francisco Bay is it's projected to the sea level is expected to rise by as much as 3 feet by mid-century and as much as 7 feet by the end of the century. So it is a serious problem that we need to address. And the good news is we are addressing it. There are a lot of planning efforts that are going forward and a lot of funding that's going into adapting to sea level rise. So the cities and the communities along the bay are working on protecting communities in a lot of areas by doing what's called green infrastructure. You can create horizontal levees, which are levees that instead of being, sort of like short walls, are more horizontal, and they're green. So you will have tidal marsh, you will have upland habitat, and so on. And when a storm surge happens, instead of breaking against a hard levee, which can erode it, it breaks over this tidal marsh, which absorbs the storm surge and slows down the force of the water. And that really helps to protect the communities that we're working to protect.
So now that we're wrapping up, what are the 3 most important takeaways you want our audience to remember today?
Well, I think the first thing is Green Foothills is local, vocal, effective. And part of that is, too, because people speak up along with us. And that means you can make a difference. It's not hard. We make it easy. Sign up for our emails at our website at greenfoothills.org, and we'll tell you when there's opportunities to speak up for local nature. And 3, we also, if you want to dive in a little bit more, we have our leadership program, and that can help you gain the skills that you would like to use to make change in your community. And again, you can apply for our leadership program at our website.
Thank you so much for the work you do.
Here's a sneak peek of the next episode of Nonprofit Stories, featuring Sabor Oyi, co-founder of Sabor's Well of Silicon Valley.
Kenya is a country that has a very deep culture and a very big in tourism.
Their mission is to support African communities, encompassing drilling wells, building schools and medical facilities, providing scholarships, and conducting leadership programs to promote individual growth and well-being.
Responsibility to be able to tell people to come to Kenya to see all this. Because first of all, around the Indian Ocean, Kenya is bordering the Indian Ocean, and we have.
Check out our next full episode on Wednesday at 5 o'clock Pacific and 8 o'clock Eastern on YouTube and Apple Podcast. Thank you for listening to the podcast and acknowledging the impactful work of nonprofits in Silicon Valley. Please subscribe and share this episode with a friend. Thank you to our sponsor, TradeMyHome.com, for their community commitment and for making this podcast possible. Until next time, remember to support local nonprofits.